Hey, fellow garden enthusiasts. We all dream of that bumper crop of ripe, delicious tomatoes, plump, juicy, and bursting with flavor. And as any seasoned gardener knows, pruning is one of those essential tasks to help our plants achieve their full potential. You snip a little here, trim a little there, feeling like you're doing your plant a favor, guiding it towards a bountiful harvest. But what if I told you that some of the very pruning habits you've adopted, perhaps even for years, are actually secretly slashing your yield? That's right, we're not talking about obvious mistakes like accidentally chopping off a main stem. We're diving into the subtle, often counterintuitive missteps that make you look at your less than stellar harvest and wonder, what went wrong? You're putting in the work, you're trying to do everything right, yet your tomato plants might be secretly starving right under your nose, unable to produce the fruits you so desperately desire. It's a common trap many of us fall into, believing that any pruning is good pruning. We see the lush foliage and think, time to open this plant up. But the truth is, the goal isn't just to prune, it's to prune correctly, with precision, purpose, and a deep understanding of what your specific tomato plant truly needs to maximize those mouth-watering fruits. These hidden yield reducers are pervasive, often passed down as general advice that, when misapplied, can turn your best intentions into diminished returns. Imagine spending all that time nurturing your plants only for an innocent snip to quietly reduce your future profits in the form of fewer, smaller, or even bland tomatoes. You might be unknowingly inviting trouble, or worse, cutting away the very potential for a fantastic harvest. But don't worry, you're not alone, and the good news is these are fixable. We're about to peel back the layers on these secret saboteurs, starting with one of the most fundamental errors, how your well-meaning shears might be directly impacting your plant's ability to create the energy it needs for fruit. All right, let's dive into our first major misstep, and this one often comes from a place of what feels like good intentions, the photosynthesis paradox. You might think, I'll just clean up these lower leaves, get more airflow, or redirect energy to the fruit. Sounds logical, right? But here's where less is more can seriously backfire and secretly slash your harvest. Think of your tomato plant's leaves as its tiny, incredibly efficient solar panels. Every single healthy green leaf basking in the sun is furiously working to convert sunlight into energy, the crucial fuel your plant needs to grow, thrive, and most importantly, produce those delicious, juicy tomatoes. This process is photosynthesis, and it's absolutely vital for every bit of fruit development. When you get overly aggressive with your pruning shears, snipping off perfectly healthy sun-catching leaves, especially from the lower or even mid-sections of the plant that are still receiving good light, you're essentially unplugging some of those vital solar panels. Suddenly, your plant has fewer energy factories in operation. It's like trying to power your entire house with only half your solar array. You just won't generate enough juice. The result, a significant energy deficit that directly impacts your harvest. With less energy being produced, your plant simply cannot fully support robust fruit development. Those tomatoes you're so carefully nurturing, they'll likely end up smaller, ripen slower, and you'll definitely see a reduced overall quantity because the plant is struggling to keep up. You thought you were helping by cleaning up or making the plant work smarter, but you were actually starving your future harvest of its primary energy source. So next time you're eyeing a healthy green leaf, remember its critical job. It's actively feeding your fruit. Don't let the desire for a super tidy plant accidentally steal its power. And speaking of stealing power, sometimes the plant itself creates energy sinks that aren't even fruit. Let's talk about those sneaky little shoots that divert precious resources. All right, let's dive into the core of your tomato plant's secret battle for energy. You've avoided over-pruning, which is great, but now let's talk about a more insidious drain on your plant's potential, the dreaded sucker. This is the third major mistake that quietly slashes your harvest. Many new gardeners, and even some seasoned ones, let these little shoots grow unchecked, unaware of the energy they're stealing. So what exactly is a sucker? Look closely at your tomato plant, specifically in the armpit where a leaf branch meets the main stem. See that small, often vigorous shoot sprouting right there? That's a sucker. It's not a flower cluster, nor is it a main stem. It's a new, entirely vegetative branch that wants to become a whole new plant. And that's where the problem lies. Each one of these suckers is an energy hog. Your tomato plant has a finite amount of energy, nutrients, and water it can draw from the soil and create through photosynthesis. When you allow dozens of suckers to develop, your plant's precious resources get spread too thin. Instead of channeling that vital energy directly into creating bigger, juicier, more abundant tomatoes, your plant is busy growing more leaves, more stems, and more suckers. Essentially, you're inadvertently training your plant to be a lush, leafy bush rather than a fruitful factory. You end up with an overly dense plant that has less airflow, which can invite disease, and crucially, a significantly reduced yield of actual tomatoes. The primary purpose of removing these specific suckers isn't just neatness, it's a strategic move to reallocate that energy, telling your plant, hey, focus on the good stuff, the fruit. You want your plant to put its effort into developing those existing fruit clusters, making them larger and more flavorful, not just adding more greenery. It's a classic sucker punch to your harvest, but the fix is simple once you know what to look for. Just be careful, though, because not everything that sprouts from an axil is a sucker you want to remove. Sometimes you might think you're getting rid of a pesky growth, but you could actually be making an even bigger mistake. All right, let's dive into one of the most heartbreaking pruning mistakes a beginner can make. You're out there, clippers in hand, feeling like a master gardener, diligently snipping away what you think are unproductive suckers, but then, gasp, you realize you just removed a potential fruit cluster, or even worse, a budding main stem. This isn't just wasted effort, it's a direct, irreversible hit to your future harvest. This mistake is super common because, especially when they're tiny, some new growths can look deceptively similar. But fear not, your tomato plants are about to become much less mysterious. We need to train our eyes to spot the great imposter before it's too late. Here's the golden rule. A true sucker will always emerge from the axil, that little armpit where a leaf stem meets the main stem. It looks like a miniature version of the main stem, typically with tiny, fully formed leaves already developing, ready to branch out into a whole new leafy stem. It's purely vegetative growth, designed to make more foliage. Now, a developing flower cluster or fruit stem, that's a different beast entirely. These usually emerge directly from the main stem itself, between leaf axils, or sometimes just slightly above an axil, but critically, not directly from within it. Visually, they often start as a smoother, slightly thicker, often rounded or pointed shoot that quickly shows signs of developing flower buds. You might notice a slight zigzag pattern as it elongates, and within days you'll see those tiny, unmistakable green pearls that will blossom into flowers. This is your plant's reproductive effort, its direct path to producing those juicy tomatoes you're craving. So the next time you're about to snip, pause. Take a good, close look. Is it coming from the armpit with tiny leaves? That's likely a sucker, though remember Part 3 discussed how to handle those. Or is it a new shoot emerging independently from the main stem, with a different texture or the promise of buds? That's your future dinner, so let it flourish. Accidentally removing these flower clusters is like throwing away perfectly good lottery tickets. You're literally cutting off your chance at fruit before it even begins. Understanding this crucial difference ensures you're not sabotaging your own success. But speaking of different plants, did you know that what you prune also depends heavily on the type of tomato plant you have? Because pruning a determinate like an indeterminate is another harvest-slashing blunder you definitely want to avoid.
All right, so you've learned what to cut and what not to confuse with a sucker. But what if I told you the plant itself has a say in how it should be pruned? This is where many gardeners stumble. treating all tomato plants like they're the same superproducer, when in reality, your determinate hates your indeterminate habits. The fundamental difference lies in their growth pattern. Think of indeterminate tomatoes like a relentless, ever-growing vine. They just keep going, producing fruit and making more leaves and stems until the first frost hits. Their main stem just keeps elongating and they set fruit continuously. Many of your popular cherry tomatoes or beefsteaks fall into this category. With these, strategic pruning can redirect energy, leading to bigger, earlier fruit on a more manageable plant. But then there are determinate varieties. These are your bush tomatoes. They grow to a genetically predetermined height, their main stem terminates in a flower cluster, and they set the majority of their fruit within a concentrated window. Their suckers and side shoots are often where a lot of that preset fruit develops. When you prune a determinate like you would an indeterminate, aggressively removing suckers or even topping the plant, you're not redirecting energy, you're literally cutting off your potential harvest. It's like trying to get more apples from a dwarf apple tree by chopping off its only fruiting branches. It just doesn't work. You're devastating your yield before it even has a chance. For determinate plants, the goal is minimal intervention. Remove any yellowing leaves, diseased branches, or anything touching the soil. But don't go wild with sucker removal. Their bushiness is their strength for producing that concentrated flush of fruit. Misidentifying your plant type and applying the wrong pruning strategy is a direct path to a significantly smaller harvest. So, know your plant. Now, once you know what to cut and what to leave, the way you make those cuts is just as critical.
All right, you've learned what not to cut, but now we're diving into an even sneakier saboteur, how you make those cuts. This next mistake is the invisible enemy, often overlooked, but it can wreak havoc on your harvest without you even realizing it. Picture this. You've carefully identified the suckers, you've removed the lower leaves, but are your tools clean? Using dirty pruning shears is like a doctor operating with unsterilized instruments. Each cut creates an open wound on your tomato plant, and if your shears carry leftover bits of diseased plant matter, bacteria or fungal spores from another plant, or even another section of the same plant, you're essentially injecting those pathogens directly into your healthy tomato. Diseases like early blight, bacterial spot, or even various wilts can spread like wildfire, compromising your plant's health and diverting all its energy into fighting off infection instead of producing those juicy tomatoes. The solution? Sterilize your tools. It's quick and easy. Before you even start pruning, wipe down your shears with rubbing alcohol or a dilute bleach solution, 1 part bleach to 9 parts water. And if you suspect you're dealing with a sick plant, sterilize between cuts, or at the very least, between plants. This simple step acts as a powerful shield against disease. Beyond hygiene, the quality of your cut matters immensely. A jagged, torn wound from dull shears or a careless snap isn't just ugly, it's a huge stressor for your plant. These rough edges take longer to heal, leaving the plant vulnerable to pests and diseases for an extended period. Think of it like a messy, open wound versus a clean surgical incision. The plant has to expend valuable energy trying to close up that ragged tear, energy that should be going into growing magnificent fruit. So, ditch those dull shears and aim for clean, precise snips right at the base of what you're removing. A sharp, clean cut minimizes the surface area of the wound and allows the plant to heal quickly, reducing stress and preventing disease entry. When your plant isn't battling infections or mending sloppy wounds, it can focus all its might on what we want most, a bountiful harvest. Neglecting these crucial details, dirty tools and rough cuts is a silent killer of yield. It weakens your plants, makes them susceptible to everything nasty out there, and ultimately shrinks your tomato haul. But don't worry, armed with this knowledge, you're ready to make every cut count. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Now that you know how to cut safely, let's bring all these insights together to craft your ultimate strategy for a record-breaking tomato season.
All right, we've walked through the minefield of common pruning pitfalls, from the invisible assassins of dirty shears to the outright mistaken identity of a fruit cluster. But here's the exciting part. Knowing these mistakes isn't just about avoidance, it's about empowerment. It's time to flip the script and build your bumper harvest blueprint. This isn't just a list of don'ts, it's a proactive strategy for explosive growth. Think of it as your golden rules for pruning. First, know your tomato's personality. Is it a determinate bush or an indeterminate vine? This fundamental knowledge dictates your approach, preventing you from accidentally pruning away your entire harvest on a determinate plant. Second, prune with purpose, not just scissors. Before you make a cut, ask yourself, is this sucker stealing energy from developing fruit? Is this yellowing leaf hindering airflow or inviting disease? Am I leaving enough healthy foliage for prime photosynthesis, those crucial solar panels feeding my fruit? Remember, we're aiming for a balance where every part of the plant is contributing to maximum yield, not just growing leaves. Third, master the art of identification. That little shoot in the leaf axil is usually a sucker. The fuzzy cluster emerging from the main stem, that's your future fruit. Taking an extra second to differentiate means you'll never accidentally sucker punch your own harvest again. And finally, precision and prevention are paramount. Your tools should be as clean as a surgeon's and razor sharp. Make clean, angled cuts to minimize stress and prevent entry points for diseases. This holistic approach transforms pruning from a chore into a powerful lever for yield maximization. By integrating these strategies, you're not just growing tomatoes, you're cultivating an optimized, high-performing harvest machine. Your confidence will soar, and your tomato plants will thank you with an abundance you never thought possible.